And if you believe with me, rise on your feet and let's sing together. Yo, 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 yo.
Medication, protection, and nutrition. No discrimination, but give them the special attention. Future generation is here with us right now. Hear their voices, we have to stand and be counted. Pata, pata.
Well, a huge welcome to this year's PATA Summit. My name is Patrick Oyaro. I work for NVCT Health based in Kenya, and also as the Chief of Party for USAID's Tawisha Pwani. And I'll be chairing this session. And on behalf of the PATA Board of Directors, I extend a warm welcome to everyone, those joining online, and hundreds of participants connecting through the 24 countries in-person satellites. This year's summit is aligned to the new Global Alliance to End AIDS in Children by 2030. And today's theme at the summit is focused on localizing and building momentum around the new Global Alliance to End AIDS in Children by 2030. So I welcome all of you, and know that this year's summit will build action to do it right, do it together, and do it now. Before we start the session formally, I would like to introduce two satellites. I want to give two satellites an opportunity to share their summit spirit and energy with us. So we are quickly going to give live to Team Cameroon. Team Cameroon, where are you? So is that Team Cameroon ready?
We've got Uganda and Cameroon. So Cameroon, maybe let's hear both of you.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. We've heard from Team Cameroon and Team Uganda ushering us to the beginning of this summit. Great, welcome to all the speakers and presenters for this first prime session. You'll have seen them. We've already seen the presenters in the flyers that we've heard. And I will take this opportunity just to introduce them as they do their presentations during the session. So first off, we have Luan, Director of PATA, who will tell us a little about the summit. And after that, we'll go straight into the video. And then at some point after that, we're going to follow through with a presentation from Dr. Shafiq Essaji. I'll go ahead and usher in Luan.
Morning, good afternoon to everyone. Very warm welcome to PATA 2022 Summit. It's wonderful to be here with you. Many of you are already familiar with the PATA Summit and the objectives of the summit. I'm going to quickly run through a few of them again. As you know, this year's summit is really about building momentum and introducing the new global alliance to end AIDS in children, identifying and showcasing good practice interventions, breakthrough strategies, tools and models, linking and learning across different virtual and satellite platforms, strengthening partnerships across clinic and community platforms, and always coming together for collective action under this year's theme of let's do it right, do it together, do it now. Just a little snapshot on the summit dashboard for those of you who want to have a sense of how many people have been registering, how many people are participating. And on the PATA Linking and Learning Hub, already over 2,771 members registered, which is really quite remarkable. Within the summit registrations, we have over 230 health facilities represented. And that is within our broader PATA network of 775. We've got a good spread of different roles, both clinical as well as psychosocial and program partners, which is wonderful. And just with the facilities that have registered, there's 230 participating facilities. We know that already over 83,000 children are receiving ART, and that is within the broader PATA network, where we know that 300,000 children are receiving ART. Today, in this virtual space, we have over 700 people all connected virtually. And then incredibly, we also have another more than 700 people all connected via 24 different summit satellites, all located across 12 different countries in Africa. The program is all available to you on the drop-down. The normal program starts early in the morning, especially if you're in a satellite. The morning program is really your own to determine. We have some activities for day 2, day 3. The first day this morning, you would have had your own in-country program and updates on your own local context. The program always starts with a prime session. It's then followed by 2 Africa Cafe sessions or 4 on today. So please, you would need to choose which session you'd like to join. And know that after each of the Africa Cafes, everything is recorded and you are able to access all of those reruns the following day. Just in terms of the Linking and Learning Hub, inviting everyone to stay active on the hub. We know that if you're participating from a satellite, please just make sure that your own satellite is connected And, rather start downloading and using the internet on your phone and connecting to the hub once you know that your actual satellite has a stable connection. The hub provides all the information and connections you need, the most latest program with session links to every single session during the summit. So you can just follow the session links, go to the day, go to the actual session you want to join. All sessions follow the times that are held within your program. So please keep an eye on that. And then lastly, just a big request from Pata. We are heading into a new 5-year strategic planning process. And right at the bottom of your drop-down, you'll see a link called Survey on Pata's Next Steps. We really invite all of you, please participate, share some thoughts on Pata's Next Steps. It is a very, very short survey. It will take you less than 5 minutes. And I'm really requesting all of you, please, to access that and complete it. And then just lastly, a huge thanks to all our partners and sponsors, and of course to all of you participating. I really wish you a wonderful summit, and I'm sure I will see you across the next few days. Thanks.
My mother is a photographer. She took these. She loves taking photos and loves telling stories. They are about HIV.
There have been so many sad stories. Even though I know they are real, I sometimes find it hard to believe.
For 40 years, there have been so many stories of loss and despair, of fear and stigma of discrimination.
Some of these people look so sad.
But there was also hope.
Wow.
People changed laws through activism and political struggles, and there are so many scientific breakthroughs.
Do you believe we can end AIDS for children?
Today, AIDS care is not as costly or complex, but still challenging. Even with all the achievements, sometimes I look at the photo and think the world has forgotten that HIV pandemic continues.
There's still so much to do.
These photos tell stories of many people who no longer face death from AIDS. My mother's photos tell the stories of people who need a blueprint for change.
We need to remind the world of their promises and commitments.
And so many people have joined this fight against HIV and AIDS, because the world's largest challenges need the world's largest team.
I like these photos. Wow.
We do not get to choose what we face in our lifetime, but we just get to choose how we respond. It's time to galvanize action, build on lessons learned, and realign programs to meet the ambitious targets agreed in the declaration. And we must now come together to commit to implement the blueprint of the Global Alliance over the next 9 years.
I believe we can do it. What should be hung here on this wall?
Well, today, at the launch of the Global Alliance, you will all decide together what hangs on the wall.
We need to believe that together we're going to end AIDS in children, once and for all.
Good morning, good afternoon, friends and colleagues. It's a pleasure to join you for the PATA Summit 2023, and fantastic to see the growth of the summit and the fact that we now, through the Linking and Learning Hub, have more than 3,000 people that might be joining us over the next few days to share experiences and learn from each other about our work, our passion, and our enthusiasm. You've just seen the video about the new Global Alliance, and I'm sure that many of you have been hearing about the Global Alliance. So what I'd like to do is just walk you through a few slides to talk a little bit about the history of the Alliance and what our plan is going forwards, and really what PATA's role is going to be within the Alliance and what each of you can do to help support us. So we know that progress for children has been stalling, and as we've rolled out the work, we've seen some really stark inequities developing. New infections in children have reduced by some 50% since 2010, excuse me, but we also see that maternal treatment coverage has really flatlined. In 2021, it was 81%, and that is barely any different to what it had been over the last 7 years. And the target that we need to get to by 2030 is 95%. Similarly, for new childhood infections, there were 160,000 new infections in children and over 250,000 new infections in adolescent girls and young women. The targets for each of these are less than 20,000 and less than 50,000 respectively. So we really have a long, long way to go. And even when we do get children onto treatment, we see that the coverage levels are significantly lower. 52% of kids and 60% of children of adolescents are accessing treatment. Compare that to 76% of adults and 81% of pregnant women. So the mothers of those kids are accessing treatment at 81%. But the kids themselves are only accessing treatment at a 52% coverage rate. And what that means is that we have in total 1.2 million children, 0 to 14 years and 15 to 19 years, who are not on treatment. This is obviously a significant problem that we need to try to address. So the Global Alliance stands on the shoulders of the global plan and the 3 frees and really builds on some of the lessons that we've learned from that. And those lessons are essentially that you must have country buy-in, you must have senior political leadership, you need alignment with the donors so that the money is going where the action is needed, and that action needs to be focused and it needs to involve and engage with communities. How do we take that forwards in the Global Alliance? Well, the first thing to note is that this is not a 5-year plan. It's going to take us to the end of 2030. So from where we are today in 2022, we have 9 years, which we're dividing up into 3 3-year phases, with the idea that at the end of every 3 years, we'll take stock, look at what's working, fix what isn't working until we get to the end of 2030 and the end of the Sustainable Development Goals. We want to promote a bottom-up approach, country leadership and community ownership, not global agencies saying, we prioritize you for action, we prioritize you for action. We want countries to say, these are our commitments, and we want you to help us to achieve those commitments. We definitely don't want to replace any good work that's going on. The opposite. We want to celebrate, share in that work, collaborate and coordinate with the work that's already happening. Initiatives like the Rome Action Plan, GAP-F, which is working to develop new formulations for children, the WHO Triple Elimination Initiative, all of these tie in to the Global Alliance, and we hope to work with them. And then finally, the point that I want to make is that we really want to address program gaps and structural barriers that are hampering our progress, especially for communities that are marginalized, for children that are in rural settings. We have to think not just about the technical issues of where to test and how to test, but also the stigma, the discrimination, the marginalization of communities, the gender inequalities that are driving the lack of progress. So in a nutshell, the Global Alliance is a 9-year strategic initiative divided into three-year phases, 4 populations of interest: children and adolescents living with HIV, HIV-exposed and uninfected children perinatally exposed to HIV, pregnant and breastfeeding girls and women who are living with HIV and who are on treatment for PMTCT, but also pregnant and breastfeeding girls who are not HIV positive, but at risk of acquiring HIV during the course of pregnancy. And these 4 populations translate into 4 pillars of action. The first is enhancing treatment and care for HIV-infected and exposed children. The second is the PMTCT work and to close that treatment gap and optimize retention in care. The third is preventing new infections among pregnant and breastfeeding women who are negative when they first sign up at ANC. And the fourth is this cross-cutting pillar that seeks to look at gender equality, at the social and structural barriers, at stigma and at discrimination. Now, the structure of the Alliance places women and children at the very center, and we've envisaged these 4 working structures within the Alliance: a leadership group that will be headlined by a steering committee with strong representation from the community, global working groups that have a technical focus to develop policy guidance, operational tools, job aids that might be useful for countries, regional hubs whose role will be to support the countries within their region by providing technical assistance around implementation and supporting data reporting from the country. And then most important of all, in-country partner teams. These are teams that are convened by the government in a particular country. They'll be multidisciplinary, bringing together all sorts of stakeholders, including community stakeholders, to really drive and lead the response in country. And for each of the pillars, we've defined a short list of the highest priority interventions. All of these will be familiar to you, but they include, multimodal case finding, optimizing treatment, using data to differentiate services to where the need is greatest, and addressing some of those important structural barriers, social barriers that are hampering our progress. So we'll be sharing these slides with you, and you can look at all of these in more detail, but we did a deep dive and really thought about where the evidence was strongest and what sort of interventions we really know are going to make a significant impact for children and adolescents. We've developed a number of dashboards that will help to track the progress of key indicators. And again, these will be available to you, and I'll share the resource at the end. But the dashboards contain information around the data. Here's one from Uganda showing information around the policies and the laws that are relevant for pediatric and adolescent HIV. And there's also dashboards that contain analytical information. For example, the stacked bar analysis, this one is showing the example for Mozambique, where you can see exactly where the new infections among children are coming from relative to pregnancy or breastfeeding and relative to the type of mom that is transmitting those infections. So a lot of data on these dashboards that will hopefully inspire the countries to formulate their plans and to track their progress against these dashboards. We had a very successful launch of the Alliance. Some of you were there participating with us, both in person in Montreal, as well as joining virtually. We had the DG of WHO, Dr. Tedros, joining us from Nigeria, and the ED of UNICEF, Catherine Russell, from New York, as well as many senior leaders in the room, including Winnie Binyayima, who's the executive director of UNAIDS. And most important, 12 countries: Angola, Cameroon, Cote d'Ivoire, DRC, Kenya, Mozambique, Nigeria, South Africa, Tanzania, Uganda, Zambia, and Zimbabwe, signed up and committed to join the Alliance. And I think that's a very important step in terms of forging the way forwards. So I can hear you all saying, what else is new? We've seen these types of alliances before. We've seen coalitions. The global plan has come and gone. What's going to be different this time? And I think the difference is you. And I really want to take a moment to underscore why the alliance is so relevant for the whole of the PATA family. First of all, there's a role for PATA in each structure of the alliance that I've defined. PATA will be represented as a key permanent partner on the steering committee, making sure that the voices of frontline providers are heard. But we also need your brain power in those technical working groups. We need your representation within the regional hubs in order to be able to support countries and provide them with the TA that they need. And most of all, if you are in country and if your country is already part of the alliance, get yourself onto that alliance country team. And if you haven't yet joined up, push your Ministry of Health to join the alliance and become another of the alliance countries that we'll be focusing on in the first phase of the alliance's work. And a special note for folks that are community supporters. If you're a client advocate, a peer supporter, part of a clinic community collaboration, we really, really need you to join and make your voices heard within the alliance. So what's next? We're coming to Dar es Salaam. On February the 1st, we'll be hosting a ministerial meeting for all of the health ministers and technical leads from the 12 countries. This will be hosted by the president of Dar es Salaam herself. And at each country will take this opportunity to present their action plans and identify their resource needs. And this will really give us a good sense of the kinds of support and funding that countries need to be able to move forwards with the agenda. So let me end with just some information and resources that you can look up. That link will take you to the Alliance website, where you'll find all of these tools and resources available to you, as well as a link that can help you to sign up to be a member. I'm going to be joining you online very shortly for your questions and hopefully some answers to your questions. And I very much look forward to taking the work of the Alliance forwards with all of your help and support.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. Great. Thanks, Shafiq, from your presentation. We are still off target. The children are lagging behind. Their mothers are doing better. Yet we talk about mother-baby pairs. I think we need to do something about that. Lessons have been shared, all stakeholders, and up to the lowest level, including the communities, must be involved. There's an emphasis on bottom-up approach and collaboration, co-creation being emphasized here. Guys, we have the 4 pillars that we need to look into. We need person-centered care, data-driven interventions. Are you involved? The difference is you. So we are ready to get behind the new Global Alliance, but let us make sure we are taking young people's priorities into account. And to do this, who better than Sharifa Nalugo, youth leader, activist, peer supporter from Uganda. Please, let's get Sharifa.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to the PATA Summit. My name is Sharifa Nalugo. I am a peer supporter and I've been serving on the PATA Youth Advisory Board for 3 years now. I also serve on the PATA Board of Directors. It's been a year now and it's been an amazing journey. I am also the Uganda Country Coordinating Mechanism Youth Representatives. And I also represent the chapter of Women and Adults and Girls on the ICW Steering Committee. It's so wonderful to have this opportunity to share my thoughts and those of my peers on priorities so that these can be discussed during the summit and considered carefully by all health providers and policymakers who are participating in this summit over the next few days. As a young person living with HIV, health providers have been the center to my journey and have supported me so that I can be strong and a healthy young woman living with HIV. I know the importance of working together with a health provider as a partner, but also know that many young people do not always have these positive experiences. Many young people continue to be blamed and ashamed and do not trust the health providers to provide a safe and a confidential space. This is what we at PATA, we want to change. And we hope all of you in this room are going to be champions to always show up for children and adolescents, and always try your best to do it right and with respect. Respect to all their rights and dignity in all their diversity. As a peer supporter, I have also been a health provider, working alongside health providers, offering adherence and psychosocial support. I have been involved in many amazing journeys of growth for adolescents. As a peer supporter, we have an important role to play in shifting attitudes and making sure that health facilities are not just friendly, but are safe spaces for the adolescents and children. I have bigger dreams, of course, and I'm much more than my HIV status. I am already working on my dream of being a well-known fashion designer. I have my own business and enjoy making clothes and celebrating the African design. I also do TikTok videos to educate people about their health or positive living. And this has made me, boost my confidence, but also give back to a community that I treasure so much. We want to support all young people to be able to live their best, don't we? As young people, we welcome the Global Alliance to End AIDS for Children by 2030, and can really see us, the importance of us all supporting this initiative and getting behind one plan. But we have had other plans. We have had, commitments and commitments. How are we going to make this one different? How are we going to make sure that the commitments met and the targets set will be met? These won't be empty promises. I know it is easier for us to commit to a global or a national plan, but these don't always change the realities on the ground. Despite all the programs, the treatment, the commitments, we still have someone dying of AIDS every minute of a day. 50 adolescent girls die every day from AIDS-related illnesses, and 460 adolescent girls become nearly infected each day. And we say we have commitments, we say we have plans. Nearly 80% of these new infections occur in Eastern and Southern Africa. And me being an African young woman, this places me and my peers at risk. And despite all the investments, all the programs we have focusing on adolescent girls and young women, we still see increasing rates of HIV teenage pregnancies. School dropouts and gender-based violences. Many adolescent girls and young women are still made to leave school and are unable to return if they are pregnant or have had a child. Many are isolated and shamed by communities, family members, and health providers. Adolescent girls are still being forced into early marriages or into unsafe, situations driven by poverty and inequality. We must do something to change this. We can't address HIV without providing comprehensive prevention options, a full bucket of choices for adolescents to choose from and be able to get exactly what they want, and make sure PrEP and long-acting injectables are available in our countries. We need comprehensive sexual reproductive health education and services where adolescents and young people from a young age have choices and can access free reproductive health, quality contraception, including emergency contraceptions, without stigma and discrimination from anyone. Choices and options to terminate a pregnancy must be decriminalized, and additional support and care must be provided to adolescents and young women and young fathers who become parents at an early age. Not forgetting communities like the gay, lesbian, transgender, and queer in our regions. These continue to be victimized and are denied services that they want, services that are responsive to their needs. Young people who are facing struggles with drugs, with mental health, and with, those that experience violence and abuse are still remain, invisible. We often overlook them. we do not offer screening or practical support that can assist them in a meaningful way. Our clinic, community, and local leaders, we need to work together to better understand the challenges young people are facing so that they can together with young people work on the solutions that are community and youth-led, that are locally owned and can be integrated into schools, into our churches, our mosques, our hospitals, and our traditional structures. Also, in all structures at all levels, we must involve adolescent young people, create opportunities for us, not just as peer educators or peer supporters where we support service delivery, but create leadership opportunities where we can learn skills and grow, help us to create businesses and be full and active citizens who can make a difference in our lives, in our communities, in our country, continent. And with all that, peer supporters still put their efforts out there to do what is best for their peers, to show them that our world can be better if you put in a little bit of hope and a little bit of love. And through representing the young people at the Patayab, we wanted to share a few thoughts of my fellow peer supporters from different countries to show you how their experience is and what they enjoy most about being a peer supporter. For me, what I enjoy most is seeing that vulnerable person that I've helped into becoming a brighter one. Imagine a young person entering into a health facility when they're scared and nervous and don't know if they will surely get the services that they need. And when they find peer supporters there, they feel empowered. They go out of the clinic empowered and strong enough to ask for that same services again. This is exactly what I enjoy about being a peer supporters. And with that, let me hand over to my fellow peer supporters.
What I enjoy most about peer education is the information that I share with them, the support groups that we do, and just engaging with young people, understanding them, understanding their views, and considering their health and rights first. So that's what I enjoy most about being a peer educator.
Enjoy engaging with young people, peers that are my age, adolescents, the children. They're so fun. It's really nice to be involved in young people. You get to know a lot from each other. You get to learn a lot from each other. So I really love everything that goes ahead with being a peer supporter.
My role as a peer supporter is to help adolescents and young people living with HIV to build confidence in their lives towards fulfilling their goals and become self-determined by having a healthy life that is free from mental disturbances and viral roads of waste.
En tant que père éducateur, nous faisons la permanence à l'hôpital, nous accueillons les mineurs dans la structure. Nous faisons la sensibilisation dans des écoles, en cours de route, dans des hôpitaux, plus précisément le jeune, les adolescents, jusqu'à 24 ans.
Étant père éducateur, mon rôle est d'aider nos pères dans la communauté qui puissent adapter un comportement sain et responsable. Et en leur prodiguant des conseils sur l'observance et l'adhérence au traitement antirétroviraux.
I find it challenging about being a peer educator, mostly is on reaching out to those hard-to-reach areas, like the peri-urban areas. We have the United Rural Hospitals. We have peers or patients who come from those hard-to-reach areas, and it becomes difficult for us to do home visits. It becomes difficult for us to reach out to them whenever we need them. Like you realize there's a lot of challenges, economic strengthening challenges. We have challenges with reaching out to them. They don't have phones that are always working. So that has been the most challenging.
The challenge I actually have at the level of the center is where adolescents who come to pick up medication at their rendezvous given to them and goes back home, and at the end of the day, we realize they don't have a good virus suppression. Maybe perhaps they don't have a very good caregiver, or they're not living with their biological parents who can actually follow them up to make sure this medication is administered. Secondly, we know we live in an atmosphere in Cameroon, especially in the Northwest and Southwest, where there's ongoing crisis. We have young girls who are pregnant, and maybe perhaps one or two circumstances they are not able to have access to medication on time.
This PATA program has helped me very much to improve on my day-to-day daily activities. It has really helped me build my confidence and also build hope to adolescents who still have stigma, encourage them, and also they get to know their rights as the young people and adolescents living with HIV.
For me, the most thing that I enjoy being a peer supporter is engaging other young people from all over the Southern African countries. Get to understand how other young people are doing it, how their experiences in terms of service delivery, in terms of information sharing, in terms of the latest things that are happening. And also it creates an exposure for us too, for me personally, to engage with other organizations besides Zondeli, besides FSD, besides PATA. We get to engage with other young people in the wonder of them.
Coming to the PATA, PATA has supported me, helped me through building confidence, because sometimes back I had stigma, I was stigmatized. Now I build confidence in me so as to disclose to my fellow. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
You can fly out, spread your wings like a sparrow. Ooh. When they wanna put you down, but you become victorious. Ooh. When you can on land just like I'm a poodle.
Well, wow. Thanks, Sharifa. It's good to note your dreams to make a difference in the society and inspire more young people to join in. And thank you to the peer educators who've shared their story. A strong reminder that young people know what is needed. And Sharifa has highlighted priorities and challenges, and these will be the focus for much of the summit. The new infections have to stop. The deaths must be stopped. School dropouts, GBV, stigma, discrimination, just to mention but a few. Let's now revisit the achievement and progress made and the lessons we can take to our countries from the success of Botswana. Welcome to Prof. Machaba from Bela, Botswana, who will give some insights into Botswana's role to eliminating mother-to-child transmission. Welcome.
Good day. I'll be presenting to you on the Botswana aim of going to gold in eliminating vertical transmission of HIV. My name is Professor Mohomotsi Matsaba. I wear a couple of hats. Here, I'll be the chairman of the National Validation Committee that led the Path to Elimination validation in Botswana. I also am the executive director of Botswana Bela Children's Clinical Center of Excellence, the largest pediatric HIV clinic in Botswana. Here's my outline. I will first go back to history and tell you a little bit about Botswana, and then go into the program itself, what we did to get to where we are, and our ambition to get to gold and beyond. So for those who may not know Botswana, we are a relatively small country, populated by 2.4 million people in Southern Africa, landlocked next to South Africa. Our HIV prevalence is really high. It remains between 18 and 20% with the recent census. And it remains so because of the program I'll describe as we go on. Our HIV treatment program, the official one, started in 2002, but before then, again, historically, we were embarking on starting this program way before that. The Treat All program was adopted in June of 2016, which meant once you identified as HIV positive, you were eligible for treatment, unlike before. And then the first line regimen is based on dolutegravir, which was recommended in 2016 as well. Our current population of people living with HIV is around almost 400,000 people. We've gone through several iterations of our national HIV guidelines, and I'll talk more about that in the next few slides as well. Before I do that, I think it's important to acknowledge and understand the issues with pediatric HIV. Generally, pediatrics tend to be thought of last, because usually when pandemics, just like COVID that we just came from, we focus on adults who then take care of children. So generally, lack of infrastructure delays taking care of children. Lack of human capacity or loss is another big one. And then the expense, specifically to HIV-related drugs in the yesteryears, was very prohibitive. Botswana then decided to say, how do we deal with this anomaly? The anomaly is generally lack of commitment to treatment of children. It's not intentional. It's based on lack of experience and training, the complexity of pediatric treatment, expertise and experience I've already shared, and then the limited drug formulation. So it's easier to treat adults with one dose than children with multiple different doses. So to deal with this, you need a robust program that will actually address some of these issues from the beginning of the pandemic. When we initially detected HIV in Botswana in the mid-80s, one of our biggest supporters was our former president, Mogae, who at the United Nations had this clarion call that is well captured and well cited by many countries. We are threatened with extinction. So because this came from the head of state, it became easier for the government to then follow through and ensure that people are taken care of. What we then did is the first phase, in the initial phase, there were no treatments. So the only thing that we could do was screening of blood samples and blood products before transfusion. The second phase, again, still no treatment. We focused on educating people on how to take care of themselves and avoid infection. And then the third phase is when we started to get drugs available on the continent. And again, we started with adults in and around 2001, 2002. Children started being treated in Botswana in 2003, again, for the same reasons I've profiled before. The Botswana HIV guidelines have since gone through multiple different iterations. We are currently on the last line there, where our first line is DTG with Truvada. And we are currently looking at dual therapy, which is quite promising. Again, trying to be a trailblazer. You will realize why I'm going through all this detail towards the end of this presentation. So coming to the core of the matter, the Botswana PMTCT program was officially launched much earlier, but put down in writing in 2011 in this guideline. The goal is to eliminate pediatric infection, improve maternal and newborn child survival. And the objective was to reduce mother-to-child transmission to less than 1% by 2020. This is a commitment that the country made in 2011. To do that and get to elimination was actually seen to be quite difficult. Therefore, the WHO in 2017 decided to have what is called path to elimination, because for high burden countries like Botswana, it will almost be impossible to reach the full validation, which means very, very few cases of transmission. So since this reclassification with the path to elimination, Botswana embarked on an effort to validate where we are in terms of transmission of mother to child of HIV. This is just the timeline of the activities that we undertook to get to validation. I think it will be important for partner countries, sister countries that may be wishing to be validated as well. It took a lot of effort. A lot of groups came together, the government of Botswana at the center, with development partners, UNAIDS, WHO, UNICEF, CDC, PEPFAR, USAID, and many, many other local NGOs that participated in this endeavor. And again, I'll talk about the results in the next couple of slides. So just to recap, for pre-elimination, there is a range and a number of medals that could be awarded depending on where you are, from bronze, silver to gold. So Botswana, based on this data, the 2019 data and the Spectrum data, was awarded the bronze tier to be on the path to elimination, much earlier than what we had actually anticipated. To do that was not easy. So for our sister countries who are working on this, I think it's important for them to have the proper process, working with our international partners like WHO guiding and making sure that the process is comprehensive enough. You need to include the civil society because these are the core people who are actually driving these numbers down. Coordination can be a headache, especially for governments. So getting partners to support that core and make sure that it's done right, I think is quite important. Consultation and keeping the leadership in the loop. Like I said, our leadership has been quite keen and interested in knowing how we are doing, and keeping them in the loop helps you with the resources and all the support that you need. Be flexible and ready to accept findings, fix faults. It's not a fact-finding mission. It's to figure out why we are where we are and improve on that, and then get technical and financial support. We struggled with whether to validate because it seemed impossible at the beginning, but we decided to go ahead and do the self-assessment, which showed us that we are actually on the path to elimination. Syphilis data was not optimal, so some countries with more robust data can do dual or triple validation. And I think it's important to do that because, again, we are talking about the same patients. We had issues with the data and then funding and technical support, so it was not all rosy. So with us being given this bronze medal, silver tier medal, we are now aiming to get to gold by 2024. To do that, we will need to get our 95, 95, 95, which we have done. We will need to get our transmission cases to less than 250 cases per 100,000 live births. And we are working hard on that in the next 2 years to get to gold. We say to get to gold and beyond, because our ultimate aim is to get to cases of transmission less than 50 per 100,000 cases per 100,000 live births. I think, again, it's not easy. It's a lot of work. We need to maintain the validation status and make sure that we continue to hone down on the issues that are continuing to transmit diseases, infections in Botswana. We can do that by focusing on young mothers who we have identified as a source of new infections, adolescents and young mothers. We can do that by focusing on those not suppressing on treatment and ensuring that their adherence is optimized. We can do that by following children that have been born and are breastfeeding or not breastfeeding, depending on the situation, to ensure that throughout the period of exposure, we reduce transmission as much as we can. We could not have done this without the support of our leadership, and I would just like to thank the government of the Republic of Botswana for supporting this vision and making sure that we have the necessary resources to see this. This was our current president receiving this award in December 2nd in 2021 in Botswana. Again, like they say, it's impossible until it's done. I would like to thank the Ministry of Health, the National Validation Committee, country partners and stakeholders, the PMTCT coordinator and the rest of the Ministry of Health team, consultants, regional and headquarters support groups. I thank you and I wait your questions.
Wow, great. Thank you very much, Professor. And Botswana has set the pace for us, and countries are looking forward to doing the same. We want to make commitments and work towards the path to elimination and succeeding just the way you've succeeded to bronze. And it's good to note that you're working towards gold by 2024. We all need to work on the barriers that cut across and the proposed multi-pronged solutions, including political will, just as demonstrated by your former president. So last but not least, for a keynote address from Dr. Shakira, and health practitioner, activist, and ambassador for UN Women and WHO, reminding us that our work within HIV is part of an ongoing efforts to secure universal health care for all, with health providers leading from the front. Welcome, Dr. Shakira.
So very good morning. I'm Shakira Chinara, and I'm currently coming in from Colombia at the Health Systems Global Summit, but also really glad to be joining in at the PATA Summit. I'm a public health practitioner who's based between the World Health Organization and UN Women. And I'm here today in my capacity, really excited to be here once again, in my capacity as a Lancet Commissioner on Adolescent Health and Wellbeing. Now, there are various elements that one can kick off on the summit and to get us started, but I wanted to take a pause and I wanted to appreciate each of you who are health workers in the room. In the build-up to the pandemic, you already had difficult circumstances where you operated in healthcare facilities which had a lack of equipment. There were safety issues, for example. You have trouble getting to work. The working hours are way too long, of course. And I think all of this has been consistent trends in health systems, but also in the environments that you operate in. During COVID-19, we saw these situations exacerbated. I recall calling a number of healthcare facilities as part of the Stop Stockouts project in South Africa, and so many facilities across the countries, healthcare workers had stated they did not have the PPE. They were facing stigma and discrimination on the way to work. Going back to their homes, their families would also face stigma and discrimination. And so these are the conditions under which healthcare workers operate in. And so this speaks to the evidence for quite a long time, and there's growing indications that there are poor quality healthcare services for adolescents. And another big factor is also that adolescents at that point of care tend to state that they face stigma and discrimination from the healthcare worker. But I think it's really important for us, and I want us to reflect as we start off this summit, that, you know, it's not the healthcare worker's fault per se, or not to play the blame game, but rather to empathize with the environments in which one operates. As we think about adolescent healthcare services, and how this was, impacted during COVID-19 and what the future holds for us. We're seeing massive disruptions to sexual and reproductive healthcare services. we're seeing that a large number of girls have left school and are unable to get back into school. We're seeing a rising number of teenage pregnancies. We're seeing those really high levels of gender-based violence. And to put that into context, young women on the ground level were unable to report this, etc. And I think all of you are very well aware of this. And these are some of the, the issues that we're seeing in adolescent health, and they're set to be even worse. When we look at the climate crisis, for example, when we're going to consider how funding is going to diminish substantially for adolescent health, these are factors that we need to consider. The decline in funding will also mean a decline in healthcare systems funding, and that will exacerbate the environments in which you as healthcare workers essentially operate. But there are two things to think about. It's not all doom and gloom. And I think we always forget that the power of adolescence, the power of youth advocacy. And so how can we actually leverage adolescents themselves to push forward better adolescent healthcare? And so that could substantially change the trajectory. It's not, as I said, all doom and gloom. Another important point for us to think about is that of healthcare workers. The World Health Organization, for example, not too much is written on this, and I hope that a lot more will be written on it. But the World Health Organization in recent times has written about it in terms of what is the role of healthcare workers. And we know that the role of healthcare workers is that of service delivery and service provision. But it doesn't have to stop there. That, of course, is critical to humanity, is critical to global public health and to social good. But the potential of healthcare workers to actually be change agents is really exciting. And that's where I'd like all of you at the summit to sit back and think about. You're providing adolescent healthcare on the ground level. You're actually the first point of care for adolescents. Yes, you have a really difficult environment to operate in, but that first point of care is so important to be treated with kindness and empathy. And if we do this, despite our difficult environments, it not only affects adolescents seeking healthcare at that point, but for their entire lifetime. So a question to us is, amidst these really tough environments that we're in, how do we keep the humanity? Because traveling across healthcare facilities on the continent, seeing how patients are treated, I think that's an area of concern. Another issue for us to think about is power dynamics. We hold significant power as healthcare workers in the healthcare system. There was the example of a recent MEC of Health in South Africa who had berated a patient for being a foreign migrant, openly doing this. And so I think we need to be cognizant of our position within the healthcare system and how adolescents feel an unequal power dynamic. And we need to be able to bridge that gap and offer those services. So I think that's another point of reflection, not to say that many of you are not doing that, of course. The final one is you sort of working on the ground level. You have the strongest and the richest insights. How do you become that change maker, as I said, that champion for adolescent healthcare, really, for young children who are living with HIV, those who are battling teenage pregnancy? How do you take what you're learning up to either your district level, your provincial level, your national health policy level? How do you become an advocate and a systems changer or a game changer, per se, for adolescent healthcare? Another idea is to think about, and many of you are probably doing this already, but how do we grow this? Is to learn from each other, to share experiences, but then to also work together with adolescents themselves. How do we as healthcare workers partner with adolescents to essentially say, how do we strengthen healthcare, for example? Another element which is overlooked is we tend to also look at the adolescents sometimes and forget about the environments that they operate in. And where we see the greatest change is where healthcare workers, for example, look at the adolescent holistically. They ask them questions about their schooling system or their schooling environment, their home environment, whether they're malnourished, whether they're receiving food. All of this is so important for the delivery of care, as we know, for HIV. So as I close off this morning and this keynote address, there are a couple of key messages I would like to leave yourself, stakeholders, and everyone who's listening in right now with. The one is, yes, we do face a really difficult path ahead in terms of adolescent healthcare, But what we need to think about is the power of young people, the power of transformative change all across the African continent, at least, but also globally. We see several young people, several youth networks coming together to advocate for HIV, to advocate for sexual and reproductive health. And I believe that this will essentially be a game changer for the future, and it can really sort of accelerate progress as well. It's then important for us to think around those who are governments and funders, for example. We're seeing an increased amount of regress, a pushback on women's rights, a pushback on sexual and reproductive health rights, which also affects HIV. We saw this during the global gag rule. It's really important for us to ensure that we do not lose momentum on the progress that we made. And then importantly, for those of us who are health workers working on the ground level, working with patients, it's extremely critical for us, as I said, to look internally. What's our position? How do we equal the playing field per se, or the power dynamics between ourselves and adolescents? How do we think about our positions, not only to deliver healthcare services, but to be advocates for change, to strengthen adolescent healthcare? So it's on this note that I join others in welcoming you to this PATA Summit, but also to push all of you to think about our roles and our responsibilities in this dynamic. As we see the evidence around adolescent healthcare being poor, as we see the evidence of adolescents being treated badly within the healthcare system, I think it's a point of reflection for us. And when we next meet, how do we change this to be positive? And this is quite easy for us to do at the very first point of contact with the adolescents that we see. I wish you well, and I hope to meet many of you in the near future.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Chonara, and especially for placing attention on health providers, our health systems, and greater and meaningful involvement of adolescents, providing the motivation and reminder that we can do this right and we can do this together. I believe that the people have taken notes of what we need to do. So I will now go live to all the presenters available, and we'll ask 1 or 2 questions that have been forwarded, and if time allows, any closing remarks from each of them before we close the opening session. So welcome, and thank you all who have sent questions. I would want to start with Sharifa. So Sharifa, if you had to choose one thing health providers must do right to ensure positive outcomes for young people, what must that be?
Thank you, Patrick. I think for me, if there were I think if they were to change one thing, that would be their attitudes. I mean, we appreciate you health workers, but do not see us as people who are there to steal your jobs. We are not going to steal your jobs. We just want to be accommodated in the same space as you. Well, when you see young people, when they come into the clinic, they trust us with their problems. So we are not a threat to you. We just want to work with you to see that adolescents have a better life. So work with us. Create a safe environment where I can come to you and, ask you questions, and you train me into things that I don't know so that I could better serve my people. Thank you. That's all.
Wow. Thank you very much. Attitude, and just a reminder that there may be no school to really train attitude. It has to come from within. I believe that the health workers, we have taken note. Next is Professor Machaba. For other countries, what are the top 3 things they should focus on or prioritize to advance ending or eliminating new pediatric HIV transmissions?
No, thank you, Patrick, and thank you for that question. I think let me just premise it by saying, as we come towards the end of ending HIV, it's going to be even more difficult to reach as compared to when we started, when 1, resources were plentiful, 2, our clients were enthusiastic when we were at the beginning, and 3, we were still quite scared of the infection compared to now. So I think each country needs to introspect and look at its society, look at the core causes and break them down and find out where they will have the highest bang for their buck, so to say. Generally, it's issues that have been covered, including by those covered by Shafiq just now, sorry, Sharifa, just now, where we have to do abnormal things, i.e. we need to involve youth in treating youth. We are currently working on a manuscript where we are looking at using young people to reach other young people. It seems much easier. They trust each other a lot more. They understand each other a lot more than if they were talking to me, for example. So I think each country needs to look at its own issues and make sure that each program is tailored to answer those questions. Secondly, we need to look at funding and looking at funding most of this locally. I'm glad that UNICEF, working with partners, have also seen it important that each country needs to be the driver of each response, because again, the paternalistic model doesn't really work because each country is different and you can't apply it across every single country. And then third, I would go for community engagement, meaningful community engagement, because that's where your lowest but highest yield programs should be based instead of waiting for your clients in the clinics. So I'd go for those three, but I mean, each country will have to sort themselves out here.
Thank you very much. We'll have to tailor-make our interventions based on the real issues in our countries, but thank you for that. At some point, you can go to the chat. There's another question on data-related issues. How do you ensure that data quality is maintained and discrepancies are sorted? But then let me go to Dr. Shakira. After many years of successful programming, it's getting more difficult to reach the final few. In light of other pressing health challenges, what is the best use of resources that we have?
Yeah, thanks so much, Patrick. And I think, you know, my emphasis would be on strengthening the actual healthcare systems, because if we're trying to reach those in very rural and very remote areas, when you visit these facilities, you see that they don't have the infrastructure, they don't have the stock or of medications, for example. And I think the investment in making sure that the actual facilities there are good is one, for patients, but two, it also creates an environment for healthcare workers to want to go and serve in these places, because that's another barrier, getting the healthcare workers to these rural and remote areas and retaining them in these positions.
Wow, great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Maybe I'll just allow Professor just to briefly talk about data quality and discrepancies. How has Botswana managed that? And what would be your advice just before we finish? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. And I think that's one of the key issues that usually drags our reporting down, because our data quality is very low. We face the same here in Botswana, where we found ourselves with multiple different electronic systems. Some of the data was in paper form, which means you couldn't analyze it. So we had to go back to the drawing board and merge all our existing databases and make sure that we continue to do that going forward. It's not easy, especially in larger countries with bigger populations, for this to be resolved. But I think with a coordinated effort from the national government, working with local institutions, facilities, and development partners, you can preferentially look at one data system or feed into one data system that will reduce your data issues. Most countries actually do have rich data. It's just that it doesn't talk to each other. And I think the sooner you figure out how to do that within your system, the better. Most development partners will have support towards that, working with the ministries of health in each country. And I think it's one of those things that nearly stopped us from going for validation, because we thought our data was so poor. But go back to the drawing board and work on that. yield dividends in the end. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Data, data, data. Do it well from the beginning and you will succeed. So as we end, we would like to play one of the one-legged challenges that's already come in from Cameroon. So thank you to the panelists, and I believe that the team can interact with you. You can stand up and join the one-legged challenge. Try it out there. Over, and thank you very much.
You know, be everybody sabi dance. So I they do this song to teach you the basic step. I say make you know the fear, run to the dance floor. Just do as I do, and we go have a lot of fun. So jump to the center, move one leg like this, and bounce it. See, and bounce it. Go, and bounce it. Now with African dance, you have to go down low. Shoulder up, and just chest. Facial expression. Give them one leg. Go. One leg. One leg. Just one leg. One leg. Keep bouncing. One leg. Show them. This song be one leg. If you get two legs, yes. If you get three legs, yes. If you get four legs, yes. So show me the dance now. I say show me the dance now. I say show me the dance now. Wow, now one leg is everywhere. Everybody's dancing one leg. If you go to the club, if you go to the church, everybody one leg. America one leg. Africa one leg. Europe one leg. Now Asia, jump to the center, move one leg like this, and bounce it. See, and bounce it. Go, and bounce it. Now with African dance, you have to